Grandma Rose could make a soufflé from memory, spoke 3 languages from her traveling days, and somehow always knew when it was going to rain. Her grandson thought these were just quirky grandmother traits until he found the weapons cache hidden behind her spice rack. Welcome to Vaulted Secret Stories. Before we begin this incredible tale of hidden identities, family secrets, and the moment when a teenager discovered his grandmother wasn't who she claimed to be, tell me in the comments, have you ever discovered something about a family member that completely changed how you saw them? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered, hit that subscribe button. This story will show you that sometimes the most dangerous people are hiding in the most innocent places. Rose Martinez had been the neighborhood's favorite grandmother for 15 years. She lived in a modest 2-story house on Maple Street in Riverside, California, with flower boxers that bloomed year-round, and a front porch where she'd wave to every passing jogger. Her kitchen always smelled like vanilla and cinnamon, and there wasn't a child within 6 blocks who hadn't tasted her famous snickerdoodle cookies. At 73, Rose moved with careful grace, wearing cardigans in pastel colors and keeping her silver hair in a neat bob. Her house was immaculate, doilies on every surface, family photos in silver frames, and ceramic cats she'd supposedly inherited from her mother. Her neighbors knew her as a widow whose husband had died 20 years earlier. They knew she'd never had children, which made her devotion to her grandson Michael even more touching. Michael's parents had died when he was 2, another car accident, Rose would explain with sadness, and she'd raised him ever since. What they didn't know was that Rose Martinez wasn't her real name. The car accidents had never happened, and the gentle old woman who brought casseroles to sick neighbors had spent 2 decades as one of the CIA's most effective deep-cover operatives, infiltrating Soviet intelligence networks. Michael Rodriguez, though he'd grown up believing his last name was Martinez, was now 16 and had never questioned his upbringing. Rose was exactly what a grandmother should be: loving, patient, protective, and endlessly supportive. She'd attended every parent conference, cheered at every soccer game, and always had the right advice. She spoke Spanish because she was Mexican-American, she'd told him, French from community college classes, Russian because she'd picked up phrases from a friend. Her accent was barely noticeable, just enough to add character without raising questions. Rose had an uncanny ability to predict weather changes, which she attributed to old bones and intuition. She seemed to know things about people she shouldn't, like when Mrs. Patterson was having marital problems, or when new neighbors would have teenage trouble. She explained these insights as wisdom from age and observation. Michael found these traits endearing rather than suspicious. Rose was his anchor, his constant, the only family he'd known. She'd taught him to cook, helped with homework, and listened patiently to his teenage complaints. He loved her completely, which made what he was about to discover all the more shocking. The day that changed everything started like any Saturday in October. Michael had slept until noon, found Rose 3 hours into her weekend baking marathon, and accepted her offer to help make chocolate chip cookies for the church bake sale. "Hand me the vanilla from the spice rack, mijo," Rose said, creaming butter and sugar with the efficiency of someone who'd made this recipe thousands of times. Michael opened the tall cabinet serving as Rose's spice rack, an impressive collection organized with military precision. Reaching for vanilla on the second shelf, he knocked over oregano. As he tried to catch the falling container, his elbow hit the back panel. Instead of a solid thunk, there was a hollow sound, like knocking on a door rather than a wall. "That's weird," Michael muttered, pressing his hand against the panel. It shifted slightly under pressure. "What's weird?" mijo, Rose asked, still focused on mixing. "This back panel feels loose." Michael pushed harder, and the panel moved inward about an inch. For the first time since he'd entered the kitchen, Rose looked up. Her expression changed in a way Michael had never seen, not alarmed exactly, but suddenly very alert. "It's probably warped wood," she said carefully. "This house is old. Things shift." But Michael was 16 and naturally curious. He removed spice containers from the middle shelf to get a better look. When he pressed different areas, one corner was particularly loose. "Grandma, I think there's something behind here, like a hidden space." "Michael, leave it alone. You'll break something." Something in her tone, firmer than her usual gentle suggestions, made Michael pause. In 16 years, Rose had never spoken to him like that. She'd never told him to stop exploring something that interested him, which made him even more curious. "It's just a loose panel, Grandma. I can fix it for you." Michael worked his fingers along the edge, looking for whatever mechanism kept it in place. Rose's voice had gone completely flat. "Step away from the cabinet now." This was so unlike his grandmother that Michael turned to stare. Rose was standing perfectly still, the mixing bowl forgotten. Her posture had changed, no longer the slightly stooped grandmother he knew, but someone standing straight and alert, like a soldier. "What's wrong?" Michael asked. "Nothing's wrong. I just need you to leave the cabinet alone." But it was too late. Michael's exploration had found the hidden catch, a small lever disguised as a screw head. When he pressed it, the back panel swung inward like a door, revealing a space that shouldn't exist. The hidden compartment was 2 feet wide, 3 feet tall, going back 18 inches into the wall. It was lined with black foam and contained items that had no business in any grandmother's kitchen. 3 handguns in wall-mounted holsters, ammunition boxers, knives that looked nothing like kitchen utensils, small electronic devices Michael didn't recognize, a stack of passports bound with rubber bands, and packages of what looked like plastic explosive, labeled in languages Michael couldn't read. Michael stared into the compartment, his brain struggling to process what he was seeing. Then he turned slowly to look at his grandmother. Rose had set down the mixing bowl and was watching him with an expression he'd never seen. Her eyes were sharp and calculating, her posture alert and ready. She looked like someone who could handle herself in a fight. "Grandma," Michael said quietly, "what is this?" Rose studied his face before answering. "It's my past, mijo, the part I hoped you'd never have to see." Rose moved to the kitchen table and sat down heavily, suddenly looking every one of her 73 years. She gestured for Michael to join her, but he remained standing near the open compartment. "Close it," Rose said gently. "Please." Michael pressed the panel back into place. It sealed so perfectly that no one would ever suspect its existence. "How long has that been there?" Michael asked. 22 years. Since we moved to this house, you and I when you were 2. Michael sat down across from her, his mind racing. "You said my parents died in a car accident when I was 2. They did die when you were 2, but not in a car accident." The kitchen felt different now, as if the revelation had changed the fundamental nature of the space. The cheerful yellow walls and copper pots suddenly seemed like props in a stage set. "Tell me the truth," Michael said. Rose took a deep breath, and when she began speaking, her voice carried traces of an accent Michael had never noticed before. Eastern European, possibly Russian. "My real name is Rozaliya Volkov. I was born in Moscow in 1951. I came to the United States in 1982 as a deep-cover operative for Soviet foreign intelligence. My mission was to establish a long-term identity and gather intelligence on American defense contractors in Southern California." Michael felt like the floor was shifting beneath him. "You're Russian." "I was Russian. I became American by choice, but that came later." Rose's hands were folded on the table, steady and calm. "I was trained from 16 to live undercover in foreign countries. Languages, customs, accents, personal histories. I learned to become whoever I needed to be. The languages you speak are my native languages. Russian, obviously. German from training. Spanish for my cover identity as Mexican-American. French because it's useful for intelligence work." Michael struggled to reconcile this information with the woman who had raised him. "But you're my grandmother." "No, mijo, I'm not." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. "What do you mean?" "Your parents were David and Maria Rodriguez. David worked for Raytheon, developing radar systems for military aircraft. Maria was a State Department translator. They were both involved in classified projects that interested my handlers." Rose paused, watching Michael's face carefully. "I was assigned to get close to them. My cover story was that I was Maria's aunt, her father's sister, who had immigrated from Mexico years earlier. I spent 6 months building a relationship with them, attending family dinners, babysitting you occasionally. You were spying on my parents." "Yes. And then they died." "Yes. But not because of a car accident." Rose's voice became very quiet. "They discovered what I was. David found evidence of my real identity. They confronted me." Michael felt sick. "You killed them." "No." Rose's response was immediate and firm. "I did not kill them, but my exposure led to their deaths." She stood and moved to the window, looking out at the street where she'd lived peacefully for 2 decades. "When your parents discovered my identity, they didn't report it immediately. Instead, they tried to convince me to defect, to turn myself in to the FBI, and cooperate with American intelligence. They said there might be ways to protect me if I helped the Americans. But you didn't." I was confused. For the first time in my career, I had developed genuine feelings for the people I was supposed to be manipulating. I cared about your parents. I cared about you. But I was terrified of what my handlers would do if they discovered I'd been compromised. Rose turned back to face Michael. "I made the mistake of trying to manage the situation myself. I contacted my handler to report that I might have been discovered, hoping they would extract me and leave your family alone. Soviet intelligence doesn't take chances with compromised assets. They decided your parents posed too great a risk. A car bomb was placed in their vehicle. It was designed to look like an accident." Michael closed his eyes, trying to process this information. His parents hadn't died in a random accident. They'd been murdered because of the woman sitting across from him. "You were 2 years old," Rose continued. "Your parents' deaths left you orphaned with no immediate family. I was listed as Maria's aunt in their emergency contacts. When authorities contacted me, I immediately volunteered to take custody of you. Why? Legally, I adopted you. The paperwork was legitimate. I had established Rose Martinez's identity thoroughly enough to pass any background check, but emotionally, yes. I suppose I kidnapped you from the life you should have had." Michael stood up abruptly, needing space to think. "This is insane. My entire life has been a lie." "Not your entire life. My love for you has never been a lie. The way I raised you, the values I taught you, the life we built together, that was all real. But you're a spy, a Russian spy. I was a Russian spy. Past tense. What does that mean?" Rose returned to her chair, her movements careful and deliberate. It means that raising you changed me in ways my trainers never anticipated. Living as Rose Martinez, being part of an American community, watching you grow up as an American boy, it made me question everything I'd been taught about this country and its people. She paused, choosing her words carefully. 3 years after we moved to this house, my handlers contacted me with a new assignment. They wanted me to gather intelligence on a defense contractor in San Diego. I was supposed to move us there and establish a new cover identity, but you didn't. I refused. For the first time in my career, I refused a direct order. I told them I needed more time to establish my current identity, that moving too quickly might raise suspicions. They were not pleased, but the Soviet Union was collapsing, and intelligence operations were in chaos. They had bigger problems than one reluctant deep cover operative in California. Rose's expression became distant, as if she were looking back across decades. Over the next few years, as the Soviet Union dissolved and became Russia, I gradually lost contact with my handlers. Some defected, others disappeared, and the intelligence services were completely reorganized. I was essentially forgotten, a deep cover operative who fell through the cracks during the transition. So you just ... stopped being a spy. I stopped reporting to Moscow, but I never stopped being careful. The weapons you found, the electronic equipment, those are insurance policies. In case someone from my past ever comes looking for me. Michael felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was learning. Do they know about me? My original handlers knew I had taken custody of you, but they never knew how important you became to me. As far as any surviving records show, Rose Martinez is a Mexican-American widow who adopted her niece's orphaned child. There's no reason for anyone to look more closely, but there's still a chance. There's always a chance. That's why I've stayed prepared all these years. Michael looked around the kitchen at the cheerful decorations, the family photos, the evidence of a normal suburban life. How much of this is real? All of it. Everything you see, everything we've built together, it's all real. I may have started as Rozaliya Volkov, but I've been Rose Martinez for 22 years. This is who I chose to become. And the government? Don't they know about you? Rose shook her head. The FBI and CIA assumed that any Soviet deep cover operatives from my era either returned to Russia after the collapse or were caught years ago. They're not actively looking for someone like me. But what if they found out? If they discovered my real identity, I would be arrested and charged with espionage. Even though I haven't engaged in intelligence activities for decades, there's no statute of limitations on those crimes. Michael absorbed this information, understanding for the first time the precarious nature of the life his grandmother had built. And me, what would happen to me? You're an American citizen, you've lived here your entire life, and you've done nothing wrong. You would be questioned, certainly, but you wouldn't be charged with any crimes. But I'd lose you. Yes, you would lose me. The kitchen fell silent except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. Michael stared at the spice rack, knowing that behind its innocent facade lay evidence of a life he'd never suspected. Why are you telling me this now? He finally asked. Because you found the compartment, and because you're old enough to understand the truth, and because ... double quotes, Rose hesitated. Because someone has been asking questions. Michael felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of questions? Last week a man came to the house while you were at school. Do you think he was FBI? I don't know. It could have been routine, or it could have been something more serious. But after 30 years of living carefully, I've learned to take such things seriously. What do we do? Rose reached across the table and took Michael's hand. We continue living our lives. But now you know the truth, and you can be prepared in case something happens to me. What do you mean, prepared? I mean you know that if I ever disappear suddenly, it won't be because I abandoned you. And you know that no matter what anyone tells you about me, the woman who raised you loves you more than anything in the world. Michael squeezed her hand, feeling the calluses from decades of cooking and gardening, but also noticing for the first time the strength in her grip. I don't care what you used to be, he said. You're my grandmother, that's all that matters to me. Rose's eyes filled with tears. Even knowing what I've done, what I was part of. You saved me. When my parents died, you saved me and gave me a family. Nothing else matters. For the first time since the conversation began, Rose smiled. It was the same warm, loving smile Michael had known his entire life. What? Your real last name isn't Martinez, it's Rodriguez. And your parents named you Miguel, not Michael. Miguel considered this information. Do you want me to change it back? I want you to choose who you want to be. Just like I did. The conversation that would change everything happened on a Friday afternoon in November. Michael returned from school to find a man in a dark suit sitting at their kitchen table, drinking coffee from one of Rose's good china cups. You must be Michael, the man said pleasantly. Your grandmother has told me so much about you. Rose was standing by the counter, alert but calm. She gave Michael a small nod, their signal that everything was under control. Michael, this is Agent Harrison from the FBI. He's here to discuss some old matters. Agent Harrison stood and extended his hand. I'm here to talk about your grandmother's past, Michael. Since you're family, I think you should hear this too. Michael shook the agent's hand, his heart racing. What about her past? She's been very honest with me about her time as a Soviet intelligence operative. The words hit Michael like a punch, even though he already knew the truth. Hearing it spoken aloud by an FBI agent made it terrifyingly real. Are you here to arrest her? Michael asked. That's exactly what I'd want to know if I were in your position, Harrison said kindly. But no, I'm not here to arrest anyone. Harrison gestured for them to sit. 3 months ago, we received information about deep cupboard operatives placed in the U.S. during the 1980s. Your grandmother's name appeared on that list. Michael felt sick, but Rose remained calm. We investigated Rose Martinez and confirmed she was actually Rozaliya Volkov. But we discovered something interesting. She stopped all intelligence activities 20 years ago. More importantly, we found evidence that she had been providing information to the CIA before severing all contact with her Soviet handlers. Michael stared at Rose. You were helping the Americans? I was confused in trying to protect you, Rose said quietly. I provided some information, but I wasn't formally recruited. Harrison nodded. The intelligence she shared helped us identify and arrest several Soviet operatives. A major espionage network was disrupted because of her cooperation. So what happens now? Michael asked. Your grandmother has a choice. The FBI will offer her immunity in exchange for her cooperation in debriefing sessions about historical Soviet operations. What kind of cooperation? Rose asked. Information about your training, handlers, and methods used in deep cover operations. Historical intelligence that helps us understand past threats? Rose considered this carefully. And if I refuse, you'd likely face espionage charges. Given your past cooperation and complete withdrawal from intelligence activities, you'd probably receive 5 to 10 years, with parole possible after 3. Michael's stomach dropped. And me? You've done nothing wrong. You'd face no charges, and we'd ensure your care and education. Rose looked at Michael, weighing her options. Missing his graduation, college years, and all the milestones they'd planned to share. I'll cooperate, Rose said, but I have conditions. What conditions? Michael's identity remains protected, and I want to stay in this house while providing the information you need. Harrison nodded. Those terms are acceptable. Debriefing can happen here or at our local office. Michael's safety is our priority too. Relief washed over Michael. Nothing changes. Your grandmother will be working with us now, which means federal protection. You'll both be safer than you've been in years. And our life together continues, Rose added, taking Michael's hand. After Harrison left, they sat quietly in the kitchen. Are you scared? Michael asked. Terrified, Rose admitted, but also relieved. I can finally stop looking over my shoulder. Do you regret any of it? Rose looked around their kitchen at the photos, decorations, and evidence of their life together. I regret your parents' deaths and that you grew up without knowing your real identity. But I don't regret raising you or becoming Rose Martinez, even though it started with lies. Miguel, identity isn't about where you come from or what you were trained to be. It's about the choices you make and the people you love. She moved to the window, looking out at the street where she'd lived quietly for 2 decades. I chose to love you. I chose to become American. I chose truth over deception. Starting as someone else doesn't make those choices less real. So what now? Now we continue being a family. I'll help the FBI. You'll finish school and go to college, and we'll both learn to live without secrets. No more hidden compartments. Rose smiled. Agent Harrison didn't ask me to completely disarm. Grandmother should always be prepared to protect her family. 2 years later, Miguel Rodriguez graduated as valedictorian. In his speech, he talked about how everyone has a story. And the most important thing isn't where you came from, but who you choose to become. Rose attended every graduation event, beaming with pride like any grandmother. The FBI had concluded their debriefing 6 months earlier, and Agent Harrison had become a regular dinner guest. The book club still met monthly in Rose's living room, where she served Russian tea cakes everyone assumed were Mexican family recipes. One evening, cleaning up after book club, Miguel asked if Rose missed her former life's excitement. You mean the constant fear? The worry about discovery? The threat to people I cared about? When you put it that way, ... Rose laughed. Miguel, I had enough excitement in your first 16 years to last several lifetimes. Now I prefer the excitement of watching you become the man you're meant to be. Miguel hugged her. I love you, Grandma Rose. I love you too, more than you'll ever know. Outside, the neighborhood settled into evening routines. Dogs, walking, children called for dinner, streetlights flickering on. It looked like any ordinary suburban street filled with ordinary families. But Miguel knew better. Every house might hold secrets. Every grandmother might have an unspoken past. And the most dangerous people often hide in the most innocent places. He also knew that sometimes those dangerous people make the best grandmothers. Rose Martinez had been many things. Rozaliya Volkov, Soviet spy, CIA informant, federal witness, but her longest and best role was the one she chose: grandmother to a boy who needed family. Protector of a life built on love rather than lies. The weapons were gone. But the woman who had once been among the world's most effective deep-cover operatives was still there, still watching, still ready to protect the people she loved. Rose Martinez had been many things: Rozaliya Volkov, Soviet spy, CIA informant, federal witness, but her longest and best role was the one she chose: grandmother to a boy who needed family, protector of a life built on love rather than lies. The weapons were gone. But the woman who had once been among the world's most effective deep-cover operatives was still there, still watching, still ready to protect the people she loved. Some secrets are worth keeping. Some identities are worth abandoning. Sometimes the most important truth about a person isn't who they used to be, but who they chose to become. Rose Martinez did both. Welcome to Vaulted Secret Stories, where we remember that everyone has a past, but not everyone gets to choose their future.